Hi, I'm Rebecca and I'm the Psych Coach, and today I'm going to be talking to you about when to leave a relationship. Plenty of people find themselves in adequate relationships that are good enough, that are okay, but today I'm going to give you 6 things to consider if you find yourself in an adequate relationship but one that isn't perhaps wholly fulfilling. Then you can take action and perhaps that will lead you to the path of a far more fulfilling relationship. It goes without saying, if you're in a relationship that is unhealthy, in which you're being abused, being treated badly, you need to leave it. This video is for people who find themselves in an okay relationship, who find themselves saying, it's fine, but actually it's not fully meeting their needs. Consideration number 1. Does every argument you have end in you fantasizing about leaving the relationship? Not necessarily a huge argument about cheating or, unfair roles within the relationship. If it's a case that every argument you have, even if it's small, ends with you thinking, this is it, I'm out of it, I don't want to be here anymore, maybe you even throw that threat around, then that could be a warning sign that actually maybe you are thinking about seriously leaving it, because it's not healthy in relationships to continually threaten that you're going to leave someone, nor is it healthy after every argument to continually fantasize about what it would be like if you left them. Consideration number 2, not enjoying each other's company. I mean, that sounds pretty obvious, but presumably when you got together, you enjoyed each other's company. You had fun with each other, you enjoyed the conversations that you had, you look forward to seeing each other. But perhaps you're in the realms of not really enjoying each other's company anymore. Maybe you would rather spend time with your friends than your partner. And if that's you, and if it's gone on for a number of weeks or months or maybe even years, that too is a consideration that maybe you ought to leave the relationship. Consideration number 3. You're arguing a lot and nothing changes as a result of it. Now, there's a bit to unpack here because 1, it's obviously totally normal to argue in relationships. 2, arguments don't necessarily involve shouting. They can involve stonewalling, which is where you blank the other person. That's an argumenting style and it's not healthy. And point number 3 is that even if people argue, it's often okay because typically relationships have certain hot areas that will always be a hot area. They're sort of the resolutions that you can never get to. Certain things in a relationship that you'll never get a resolution on. But generally, couples who are healthy manage to navigate those. I'm referring to endless arguments that don't get anywhere, that have no resolution ever, and that are often quite heated, can often involve a long recovery time afterwards. Perhaps we're talking days after you've had a stonewalling episode where you've blanked your partner. Perhaps we're talking weeks if you've had a shouting match. If you're arguing, the arguing gets nowhere, but actually you're using a huge amount of energy on arguing, what's that about? Maybe that too is another consideration that you ought to leave the relationship. Consideration number 4 is playing out your relationship with other people. What I mean by that is imagining yourself in the relationship of what your friends have, imagining yourself in a relationship with someone at work, imagining yourself in a relationship with, whoever it is, but your partner. If you're spending a huge amount of time investing in a fantasy of what it would be like if you were with someone else, again, that's not particularly healthy. Of course, everyone thinks about, what would it be like if I was with so-and-so? Well, imagine what it would be like being in a relationship with them. But if you spend a lot of time thinking about being in a relationship with people other than your partner, you need to listen to that because that isn't healthy. Consideration number 5 is being excessively envious of other people's relationships. Okay, what do I mean by excessively envious? So it's perfectly normal to envy things. It's perfectly normal for if someone's got something you want to think, I'd like that. Or it's perfectly normal for you to sort of be envious if you've got a friend who's in the throes of dating and is really enjoying it. It's fine to feel envious. But envy can become really unhealthy when it becomes quite obsessive, and when there's also quite a negative flavour to it, where you start putting down the thing that you're envious of. Oh, well, that is a nice relationship, but I wouldn't want it because of X, Y, or Z. And you start pointing out all the flaws in it. And if you're obsessing about someone else's relationship, getting envious, but at the same time putting it down, it would suggest you're in the realms of unhealthy envy. And if you spend a lot of time being envious, and indeed unhealthily envious, of other people's relationships, again, it's time to consider what you're missing. Because the reality is, if you were not necessarily wholly satisfied, but quite satisfied by the relationship you were in, you wouldn't be too focused on what other people are doing in their relationships. It is often a sign of dissatisfaction when you are obsessing too much about other people's relationships. Consideration number 6 is overly missing an ex. If you find yourself in a relationship where you're slipping into remembering the relationship you had with your ex, remembering the nice things about the relationship you had with your ex, going for dinner and wishing you were with your ex, sitting watching a film and wishing you were with your ex, then that is a warning sign about dissatisfaction in your current relationship. The reality is, if you're quite happy with your relationship, you're not going to be particularly fussed about the quality of your ex's relationship. You're not going to be particularly fussed about what they're getting up to. Of course, there's always going to be an element of curiosity with your ex. That's normal. But when you start thinking, essentially, you wish you were with your ex instead of your partner, or you start missing them and their company and their friendship more than is ideal, i.e. you're obsessing about it a bit, that is a warning sign that you're not satisfied in your current relationship. Now, these 6 considerations are more like pointers. They're not saying, right, if you're constantly arguing, if you're missing your ex, if you're unhealthily envious about other people's relationships, you've got to end it. But if you answer yes to a number of the points that I've made and think, that sort of speaks to what I'm experiencing, then it would suggest it may be time to end your relationship. And to the point I made about at the start, even if your relationship is adequate, often that's not enough. Relationships are meant to be fulfilling. They're meant to be enjoyable. They're not things to be avoided, not things to roll your eyes at. They're meant to enhance your life. So if you find yourself in the realms of being in an adequate relationship, but not perhaps the most ideal one for you, then maybe it's time to end it. If you've enjoyed today's video, then hit the like button, subscribe, and I will give you plenty more tips on how psychology can help you in your day-to-day life.